Hi, I will show you everything on the Gauntlet, how to maximize your damage, skill rotations, and everything from 0 to hero. First, we need to look at the Gauntlet chart skill. So this Gauntlet chart skill is your core skill. It means all your skill, all your other skill, and all your buff on everything, it will hovering around to boost your this chart skill. The name is called Falcon. So this is very important. You need to remember the name because throughout this guide you hear a lot of Falcon. So this is your core skill for your Gauntlet. And for this Falcon, you need the resources. Call this one. This is a Heaven Wheel. There's 4 gauge here. You need to have at least 2 gauge to cast this skill. And there's 2 types of this chart skill. The first type is that when your gauge is at 2 segments, so it will release a lower version of the chart skill. So when you have 3 charge, it releases a better version of chart skill. So this is very important. You need to wait your bar to reach minimum 3 bar first before using this skill to boost, receive an additional 20% bonus damage. So don't use when this Heaven Wheel bar is below 3, don't use this one. So once you use this skill, it will consume your Heaven Wheel here, you consume everything here. Then if you have Innerway, the soaring high, this one, if you are already at the tier 6, this allows you to use the strongest versions of the chart skill which consume 4 bar. We have a critical damage boost by 10%. So this 4 bar is the strongest version. If you have tier 6, so always use your chart skill at 4 bar. So don't use at 2 bar. And it's not recommended to use at a 3 bar also. So better to charge everything to 4 bar first, then before using the chart skill. Then one important bonus tip is that if you look at your soaring high, let's say if you're already at the tier 3, so this is very important. If you damage and exhausted both with your Falcon pursuit, you can reset your chart skill. So what you reset means, if you have the 3 bar above, so there will be a cooldown 18 seconds to use these stronger versions of the chart skill. So the cooldown is 18 seconds because you don't want to use the lower versions. Lower versions, there's no cooldown, but don't use this one. Always use the higher versions. The cooldown is 18 seconds. So that means if you have this one reset counter, so you need to observe the boss key show. If the key show is almost finished, remember to use your chart skill first before the boss exhausted. Then during the exhausted stage, you can quickly hit the boss with the Falcon Pursuit to reset your chart skill, then release your chart skill again. So you can do it 2 times. So you can have 2 immediate chart skill. Then of course the chart skill consumes the Heaven Wheel. You use this Gauntlet Massage skill and the Gauntlet Special skill to fill the Heaven's Wheel. I will explain later. Because the Special skill has smaller cooldown 6 seconds. Massage skill is 15 seconds. So before the boss exhausted, you need to increase the bar and Heaven Wheel bar to 4 gauge. It's better to use a quick skill to increase your Heaven's Wheels quickly before the boss exhausted. Then after exhausted, use another time. So I'll explain start with the Rope Dart. So the Rope Dart special skill. So this Rope Dart is used to buff. The special skill is to buff your this Heaven Wheels restorations. If you have this buff, your Heaven Wheel will restore faster. So look at this one, you restore the Heaven Wheel after release the Falcon Pursuit. So what is Falcon Pursuit? So let's go in one by one. So now I am with the Rope Dart. So if I use a special skill, so look at this one, the bottom here, you get this buff. So casting Falcon Pursuit grant you extra Heaven Wheel. Heaven Wheel is this gauge. So what is Falcon Pursuit? You can look at your Gauntlet, your light attack. This is a normal light attack. So you release this Falcon Suit at 6 attacks. So like this light attack, it will punch a lot of times. So at the 6th time of punchings, it give you this Falcon Pursuit. So let's use the Gauntlet now. So if I use the normal attacks, look at this one. There's nothing happen. If I punch 6 times, so you'll see this bird fly up. So this bird is the Falcon Pursuit. So if you punch 6 times, so you need this bird to restore your Heaven Wheel here. So this is very important. So this Falcon Pursuit, you need to remember this one. So this is a very important skill. So there will be a more deeper version about this Falcon's Pursuit things I'll explain later. Then the Rope Dart Massage skill is just used to boost your damage. So if you hit the dummy with the Massage skill 1 time, so look at this one, you get this one. So it will increase 10% HP damage from your this Falcon from your chart skill. So you need to activate this buff every time before you use your Gauntlet chart skill. So this martial skill, you only need the first hit to get the buff. You don't need the second hit. You can use a cut skill to get this buff. Only the first hit. Because the rope that you need to have these two buffs, the special skill and the martial skill. This one at the top, this one buff, and the second buff. This one need to keep activate all time during your rotations. So it's better to switch to your rope darts. So use both of the skill together to synchronize these two buffs. Because you look at the cooldown of these two, actually the cooldown is different. So the special skill is 18 seconds and the martial skill is 15 seconds. So now we need to synchronize this one. So first we want to use the highest cooldown skill first. So a special skill is 18 seconds. So always make sure when you switch to your rope dart, you want to use your special skill first, the highest cooldown first. Then only use your lower cooldown. So you can make sure you synchronize these two buffs together in one time. So when you are in the Gauntlet stage, when you switch to your rope darts, always use a special first, then only martial to keep this synchronized, these two synchronized. Then switch back to your Gauntlet. Then the buff, either one of these buffs is running out, so we can use back to the rope dart. So the cities. So with two cities, so you can switch back to the rope darts, then buff two skill together. So make sure you use these two together based on the highest cooldown buff at one time to synchronize these two buffs. Then the other thing is that if you look at this Sky Grid martial, so if you damage an enemy with your rope dart, so it's a rope dart, if you trigger the Falcon pursuit also, so this will also restore your Heaven Wheel by 1/4 of the bar. So when you use a special skill, this one, actually you can use a martial skill later. Because martial skill has more hit, you can trigger the Falcon. So special skill, then martial skill. So look at this one, there's one Falcon here. So this restore 1/4 of your this Heaven's Wheel Gush. So it's better to use special skill buff first, then only martial skill. Then now I will come to the Gauntlet skill explanation. So start with the light attacks. Light attack damage isn't much, but the most important thing is it gives you this Falcon pursuit to restore your Heaven Wheel. So always punch 6 times, and you are required to put this light attack into your skill rotation also, because ultimately you need to have 4 gush to trigger only use your special skill. So this is your main skill. So always think of the way to increase the Heaven's Wheel here to 4 as fast as possible. So in your skill rotations, don't forget these light attacks to have these birds flyings, the Falcons, to boost your Heaven's Wheel. Then come to the special skill. The special skill of this Gauntlet is very important because you look at this one, the cooldown is very short and nothing special on the damage. But you see this one after casting, immediately followed by light attacks, 5th light attacks, immediately followed by 5th light attacks. Remember, you need 6 punch to have these Falcons. So, but after using the special skill, you only need 2 punch. You can start from the 5th and 6th punch to trigger these Falcons to restore your Heaven Wheel. So look at this one. If you use a special skill, nothing happens, no burst, no Falcons. Then you use again, combine with a light attack 2 times. So you have these Falcons. So you need this Falcon to restore your Heaven Wheel. So for your special skill, once you press it, remember to press 2 times to have these Falcons. So this is very important. So always combine your special skill with your light attack. So you can combine this one and call it one skill. So this is a one complete skill with your light attacks. Remember to do the light attacks. This light attacks with the left mouse buttons after using the special skill to have these Falcons. Then for your Gauntlet martial skill. So this martial skill, the first part, there's 2 parts. So look at this one. If you press 1 time, so first part, then second part is this one. First part is to dash in, second part is to dash out. So this is very important. This is 2 parts. Then for the first part, actually nothing special. The most important is the second part. So this gives you restore your Heaven Wheel. The second part triggers this Salacious Mandate. It's used to restore your Heaven Wheel for your chart skill. So if you look at your Innerway here, so this Soaring High Tier 1. So you look at your Soaring High here, even at Tier 1, you have this Salacious Mandate. If you have this Salacious Mandate, you can skip your light attacks to 5th attacks. they had these Falcons earlier, so it is about same like your special skill. If you had this Innerway at tier 1 Gauntlet, martial skill, second stage, this one, the second stage. So this one means that if you use the first stage, you use light attack, nothing happen. But if you use the second part, then you use a light attack 2 times. So you have these Falcons. Look at this one. So this Falcon restore your gosh, okay. So always use your Gauntlet martial 2 times. Then follow up with the light attacks 2 times. So the original martial skill has no bird. Look at the no bird. But if you use a punch 2 times, there's a bird. You skip 4 punch, directly go to the 5th punch. So because 6 punch, only you have the bird. This one. So if you use your special skill, you only need 2 punch to have the burst. If you use martial skill, then also 2 punch for the burst. Okay, so it restores your heaven's wheel faster for your this ultimate charge skill. So this is your core skill. Everything built around this core charge skill. And because your skill is very limited and your charge skill, it takes 18 seconds of the cooldown. This one 18 seconds is very long. So in between 18 seconds while waiting your charge skill, you need to feel the filler skill like your martial skill and your special skill. Because these two, the cooldown is very different. This one is 6 seconds, this one is the 15 seconds. So always use a higher CD first. So always start with the martial skill first, then only use your special skill. Always use a higher cooldown as a filler skill. The only thing is that remember this Innerway at tier 3. So when the boss exhausted, you can reset the charge skill cooldown. So when just before boss key shows exhausted, so you can quickly restore your heaven wheel with this fast special skill. Because you have to use 2 times before exhausted and after exhausted. Then only you start with your special skill first 6 seconds to get your Falcon to restore, to make sure you have the full guard here before the boss exhausted, and use your charge skill before the boss exhausted. Then reset the 18-second cooldown and use again the charge skill. So that's everything about the skill explanations. Now we come to the skill rotations. So the skill rotation is very simple because everything is hovered around the charge skill. So you want to get your gush, this heaven wheel gush, to full charge as soon as possible. And the skill cooldown is 18 seconds. So every 18 seconds, you should always use your charge skill, so don't waste this one. So when the cooldown is up, always use your charge skill as your top priority, so don't waste the cooldown. So other skills are just your filler skills to increase your heaven wheel and whatever filler to fill your DPS until your next charge skill is up for 18 seconds. Then always keep your rock dark buff always up, so make sure you use your special skill first, then only martial skill. So this is one set of buff. Press a special skill followed by martial skill as one set buff, then switch back to your Gauntlet. So make sure these 2 buff is up. Then always pairing your Gauntlet special skill with your light attacks to have the burst. Then also pairing your martial skill Part 2 with the bird also with the light attacks. Because the cooldown is very long, so a lot of time you will be in the empty pockets, you have no skill to use. So plan wisely for your special martial skill and also your special skill, so as a filler skill to fill the cooldown for your charge skill. So this is basically a free flow rotation. If you are playing other martial arts, the Gauntlet is very different from other martial arts. There's no specific skill rotations, so just use the filler skill to fill everything within the charge skill rotations. So if your both martial art and special skill are in the cooldown, you even can use your light attack 6 times as a filler skill while waiting your this gush to be fully charged and waiting your special skill cooldown. So here is the skill rotations, just an example, because in actual it is very hard to have a very organized skill. Just make sure you use your charge skill as much as possible within the 18 seconds pocket. So first start with the flute, then followed by the rock dark special skill buff and martial skill buff. Then switch to your Gauntlet, use a martial skill Gauntlet first part only, then Gauntlet special skill followed by light attack 2 times. Then switch back to your martial skill for the second part. After second part, use the light attack 2 times to hit the Falcons. Then now use the Gauntlet charge skill when you have full gush full and 18 seconds is already there. So this is a core attacks After that, skill with your soaring spins and leaping top, just the first part. Then switch to your Gauntlet, use a special skill and land attacks 2 times for the burst. Then use your Gauntlet's martial skill 1 time. Then switch to your Rock Dart for the buff, special skill and martial skill buff. Then quickly switch back to your Gauntlet martial skill for the second part, then followed by light attacks for the burst. Then Gauntlet special skill followed by light attacks to restore the guard. Then finally the charge skill is up, use a charge skill. So there's no specific fixed rotation for this one, just use it random. Just use a skill in not very order. Just use a skill to fill whatever when there's a tank to fill up. So bear in mind that keep the Rock Dart buff always up. Then Gauntlet martial skill part 2 with the light attacks to restore the guard. Then Gauntlet special skill to restore the guard also with the light attacks. So that's all about the rotations. It is a free flow rotations. It is very different from other martial art. Then for the Innerways, use the Mario Chan, Soaring High, Sky Grip. So these 3 are mandatory. The 4th one you can either use Empirical Edge or Breaking Point. Then the Gearstat, use this one at the rough set. So this one buff your Gauntlet. The Heaven Wheel Gauntlets here. They give you minimum physical attacks. Then you can use this set from the new release, these wearables. Then for the Mystic skill, the mandatory is your Foot of Tide, this one, and your Soaring Spins. And also your Leaping Top has your Filler skill. So other are up to your playstyle. Then for your Gearstat, the S tier Gearstat is your max physical attacks, critical rate, precision, power, and agility. Then tier B stat is your minimum physical attacks and member attacks bonus. Then for your endgames and gradations, the endgames you need precision about 99%, critical rate 80% maximums, and affinity 10%. Then for Gearstat, you need 12 slots of the maximum physical attacks. So you need 12 slots from 8 pieces of gear, then 9 slots of power, 8 slots of critical rate, 3 slots of agility, and 3 slots of precisions. Then you can have the stat like all martial boost or the boss damage bonus. Then for the attunements, offensive gear use physical penetrations. Defensive gear you should give your Gauntlet charge skill bonus, which is your Gauntlet charge skill on Falcon. So that's all about videos. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.